Welcome back to Time with God series, Joyce Meyer's Everyday Bible Journey for Busy Moms. We are picking up in Genesis chapter 41. Whoa, that is right. Chapter 41. I cannot believe it. I'm WendyMichelle Thompson, and let's begin. After 2 full years, Pharaoh dreamed that he stood by the river Nile, and behold, there came up out of the river Nile 7 well-favored cows, sleek and handsome, and they grazed in the reed grass in a marshy pasture. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river Nile, ill-favored and gaunt and ugly, and stood by the fat cows on the bank of the river Nile. And the ill-favored, gaunt, and ugly cows ate up the 7 well-favored and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. But he slept and dreamed the second time, and behold, 7 ears of grain came out on one stalk, plump and good. Verse 6, and behold, after them 7 ears of grain sprouted, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the 7 thin ears of grain devoured the 7 plump and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So when morning came, his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but not one could interpret them to him. Then the chief butler said to Pharaoh, I remember my faults today. Verse 10. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker, we dreamed a dream in the same night, he and I. We dreamed, each of us, according to the significance of the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard and chief executioner, and we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them to us, to each man according to the significance of his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came to pass, I was restored to my office as chief butler, and the baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. But Joseph first shaved himself, changed his clothes, and made himself presentable. Then he came into Pharaoh's presence. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. And I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream and interpret it. Verse 16, Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me, God, not I, will give Pharaoh a favorable answer of peace. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood on the bank of the river Nile, and behold, there came up out of the river Nile 7 fat, sleek, and handsome cows, and they grazed in the reed grass of a marshy pasture. And behold, 7 other cows came up after them, undernourished, gaunt, and ugly, just skin and bones, such emaciated animals as I have never seen in all of Egypt. Verse 20, and the lean and ill-favored cows ate up the 7 fat cows that had come first. Verse 21, and when they had eaten them up, it could not be detected and known that they had eaten them, for they were still as thin and emaciated as at the beginning. Then I awoke, but again I fell asleep and dreamed. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain, growing on one stalk, plump and good. And behold, 7 other ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. Now I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could tell me what it meant. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the 2 dreams are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Then 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears of grain are 7 years. The 2 dreams are one in their meaning. And the 7 thin and ill-favored cows that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty ears of grain, blighted and shriveled by the east wind. They are 7 years of hunger and famine. This is the message, just as I have told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Take note. 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt are coming. Verse 30. Then there will come 7 years of hunger and famine, and there will be so much want that all the great abundance of the previous years will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and hunger, destitution, starvation will exhaust, consume, and finish the land. And the plenty will become quite unknown in the land because of that following famine, for it will be very woefully severe. That the dream was sent twice to Pharaoh, and in 2 forms indicates that this thing which God will very soon bring to pass is fully prepared and established by God. So now, let Pharaoh seek out and understand. Provide a man discreet, understanding, proficient, and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt as governor. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him select and appoint officers over the land, and take 1/5 of the produce and of the whole land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, year by year. Verse 35. One moment, please. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and lay up grain under the direction and authority of Pharaoh. And let them retain food in fortified granaries in the cities, and that food shall be put in store for the country against the 7 years of hunger and famine that are to come upon the land of Egypt, so the land may not be ruined and cut off by the famine. And the plan seemed good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find this man's equal, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, for as much as your God has shown you all this, there is nobody as intelligent and discreet and understanding and wise as you are. Verse 40. You shall have charge over my house, and all my people shall be governed according to your word, with reverence, submission, and obedience. Only in matters of the throne will I be greater than you are. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in official vestments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. He made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had, and officials cried before him, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without you shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, or Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph made an inspection tour of all the land of Egypt. Joseph, who had been in Egypt 13 years, was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went about his duties through all the land of Egypt. In the 7 abundant years, the earth brought forth by handfuls for each seed planted. And he gathered up all the surplus food of the 7 good years in the land of Egypt, and stored up the food in the cities. He stored away in each city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph gathered grain as the sand of the sea, very much until he stopped counting, for it could not be measured. Verse 50. Now to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On, bore to him. And Joseph called the firstborn Manasseh, making to forget. For God said, He has made me forget all my toil and hardship in all my father's house. And the second he called Ephraim, to be fruitful. For he said, God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Verse 53. When the 7 years of plenty were ended in the land of Egypt, the 7 years of scarcity and famine began to come. As Joseph had said they would, the famine was in all the surrounding lands, but in all of Egypt there was food. But when all the land of Egypt was weakened with hunger, the people there cried to Pharaoh for food. And Pharaoh said to them all, Go to Joseph, what he says to you, do. When the famine was over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine grew extremely distressing in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the known earth. And that concludes Genesis chapter 41. Guys, please tell me what you think in the comments. Here was Joseph, so favored amongst his brothers. His father loved him. His brothers were jealous. They wanted to get rid of him. They actually wanted to kill him. But they knew that that would just bring harm upon them. So they sold him into slavery. And then poor Joseph, he's trying to do right. The king's wife is just saying, lie with me. And he rejects her time and time and time again. And so she, being, I'm sure, put off and can't believe that this man is turning her down, makes up these lies about him, which gets him unfairly thrown in prison for several years. there's other people that get thrown there, and Joseph has been given this great wisdom, this gift of interpreting dreams. That was one of the things that Joseph's brothers hated about him, other than the fact that he was favored by their father. And they did not want to hear Joseph saying, "Oh, I will be over in commanding you one day." It wasn't Joseph trying to say anything to be haughty or to say, "Oh, my dreams say this and I'm superior." It wasn't that type of thing at all. Joseph was trying to relay these dreams to his brothers so that they would know what would be happening and to help prepare. God was giving Joseph these dreams as a young boy, little by little. But, you know, even when he tried to help the other prisoners, well, the one that was back in Pharaoh's favor completely forgot about him. The other one's dream was not as good, and he, of course, was beheaded. But, I mean, it was not until Pharaoh started having some dreams and no one could interpret them that finally that baker or that butler said, "Oh, forgive me, for I have forgotten this man." And he felt bad about it, and he told Pharaoh, you've got to listen to him. And he's been stuck in this prison forever. And now Pharaoh is so thankful that Joseph can interpret these dreams, because Pharaoh wouldn't have naturally known what to do during that prosperous time. Probably so much would have been wasted. But nope, because Joseph could say, there's going to be this huge famine. All those prosperous years is going to be stored up, needs to be stored up, not just for your people, but for the surrounding lands. And of course, that is going to save so many people, make you look better, this and that. And now Joseph is Pharaoh's right-hand guy, pretty much. I'm excited to share what happens next. If you guys don't already know, I love these stories of the Old Testament, and anyone that says that we cannot apply the Bible to today, they haven't really dug into the Bible. There is so much we can take from this. And I think there are times that each one of us hear God's voice, but we sort of shake it off and think, no, we do seem to be more in tune with Satan's voice and listen to it. He's deceptive. He's the father of lies. And he's gonna present things in a way that looks appealing, just like the fruit that Eve chose to eat. But there's always something. There's something to it that is not good. God talks to us all the time. We just have to be still and listen. And when we pray, be quiet and wait for that answer. We're going to think we hear answers from people. Oh, that's God's way of directing the answer. Be still, listen to it, pray over it. That's why it's so important to be in God's Word, because if anything comes from deception, or it seems sketchy, or just does not seem right, that does not come from God. And yes, God does talk to us today, but we have to be willing to hear Him. And the more you practice this, the more you will hear God speak, and the more you can push away what Satan is trying to throw in to throw you off. God bless your today and all your tomorrows. And we will be back with Genesis chapter 42.